Our lives as individuals and as a nation have undoubtedly been altered by the recent global health crisis. As we adjust to a new way of being, where do we find the inspiration to once again renew our energies? We trace a cycle of life that begins from childhood, in games and sports, in rites of courtship and marriage, in transitions to an afterlife free from all pain and disease. All stages marked by the melding of tradition, skill, memory, and unity. Here is what we most need now: a renewal of our bodies, hearts, and spirits. This is Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride. Lately, thanks to the internet and social media, there has been a renewed interest in many aspects of our pre-colonial culture. Clues of forgotten kingdoms, glimpses of great treasures, connections to Southeast Asian empires, all of which point to a hunger for a past that may ennoble and inspire us. Among the most popular fields of interest that netizens are eager about are the of self-defense, arnis, kalis, silat. The terms conjure both rigid physical activity as well as rigorous mental discipline. In this season of Dayaw, we cannot celebrate kakaibang sigla without looking at the traditional ways in which our forefathers both exercised their bodies as well as defended themselves. Beneath the sheer and awesome physicality, there is a mental discipline, the wholeness of mind, body, and spirit. Add to these the connection to our own roots. In this two-part special, we see the manly grace and hear the voices of the practitioners and grand masters of our traditional martial arts.
I'm Felipe P. Hocano Jr. I teach anthropology here at UP. I teach also martial arts, Filipino martial arts, Moro fighting arts or silat, and Chinese martial arts as well. FMA is a catch-all term for Filipino martial arts, right? Several years ago, this group of arts we call Filipino martial arts used to be known by regional names. For example, if they use the sword, they call the kalis. The word kalis occurs in several languages, like in the old-style Tagalog, as well as in the languages in Mindanao. Okay, up here, kalis it's a generic term for sword, but in Mindanao, it's also referred to as the kris. Then you have styles that call themselves, let me see, arnis. Of course, that's the most well-known, and that's the term that is being used in the Tagalog and Hiligaynon-speaking areas today. The other groups, language groups, prefer to call their arts eskrima, so you have this in Cebu. And in the Panay and Negros area, you will find people referring to their arts as baston, which means stick, primarily because of the use of the stick in combat. In Ibanag, pagkali-kali, that's one. So to play the art of kali or to simply do stick fighting and sword fighting.
Though we like to think of these fighting techniques as authentically Filipino, they are the results of local sources as well as foreign influences from the pre-colonial as well as the colonial past, which we have indigenized. As a respected cultural historian, Dr. Florentino Ornedo used to say, the stranger of yesterday is a native of today.
So techniques are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. See? Some maneuvers or footwork patterns are called in Spanish terms. So there is X to have the crossing step, okay, X, or to go forward, seguida, to retreat, retirada. And some systems also use Spanish names for the techniques. There is no specific one region from which all FMA came. There are many places where it just gradually developed. Think of it as like a bamboo. See? Bamboos, the visible part of the bamboo is when you see it growing out. But underneath the ground, it's just spreading outward. FMA is also a combination of those styles from the that began with local people and then were added, to which were added Spanish methods, and that is the result we have today, a hybrid martial art with a long historical past as well. For the last 10-15 years, we've been seeing a great deal of interest in, what is Filipino? How do you define Filipino? What is identity? Filipino identity in particular. How do you define it? How do you pin it down and put a specific label to it? And this process, this whole undertaking, is where Filipino martial arts come in. Now, people are attracted to Filipino martial arts because you have a way of expressing identity that's not just simply in the books. It's not all up here. It's not cognitive. It's actually kinetic. By movement, you can realize what kind of identity you have.
Each indigenous Philippine culture had its own warrior tradition, and with each warrior, a standard set of weapons that identified the culture group. It is fascinating to see how a blade, a shield, and a spear can have so many beautiful and deadly forms. But take these away, what remains? In Filipino martial arts, the most magnificent weapon is a human body itself.
Stay up to date on His Excellency President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s actions and initiatives this week as he leads the country in nation building. PBBM at work. Disaster Watch. Mga paalala pagkatapos ng lindol. Suriin ang iyong sarili at mga kasama kung may tinamong pinsala. Magbigay ng paunang lunas kung kailangan. Unahin ang mga pangangailangan ng mga matatanda, buntis, may kapansanan at mga bata. Kung nasa tabing dagat at may banta ng tsunami, agad na lumikas papunta sa ligtas at mataas na lugar. Suriin kung may natapong nakalalasong kemikal at mga bagay na maaaring pagmula ng sunog. Patayin ang main switch ng tubig at kuryente, pati na rin ang tangke ng gas o LPG para sa maaaring pinsala. Huwag bumalik sa loob ng gusali hanggat walang abiso na ligtas na ito. Sa panahon ng sakuna, dapat laging listo.
This hybrid or integrative skill, as Hokano describes it, is very reflective of Philippine culture in general. Many forms and influences have come together over the years, creating one distinct skill. This skill, in turn, births many regional and cultural variations. Hokano explains the differences between arnis, kalis, silat, and eskrima.
The word arnis is a local pronunciation of an older term called arnes. And arnes actually came from Espanol, arnes de mano. But the original idea of arnes actually was the equipment. It wasn't just the sticks or the sword. It was also the armor a warrior wore to combat. But arnis can also be other kinds of weaponry, for example. Then you have, let's say, the dagger. This is an aluminum training dagger we use. Primarily, the purpose is to provide a stimulus for self-defense. So when somebody stabs, there's a certain pattern of defense and then locking techniques. Sometimes if it's a stick versus the knife, the use of the stick is supposed to impact here against the hand. Then you have eskrima, which literally means sword. But eskrima is from Espanol esgrimir, which means fencing. So the indigenous forms of sword fighting could only be described by the Spaniards using their own language, which is esgrima, esgrimir. Okay? But in many of the more recent historical publications, there's some evidence that many of the kingdoms here encountered by the Spaniards had pretty well organized armed groups. But the word eskrima stuck because of the preference they found this for blade fighting among these early Filipinos that the Spaniards encountered. Now this one. This is where you have eskrima use because you can do some things with the sword that you cannot and should not with a stick and vice versa. So ito ang tawag nakaw. Nakaw. Hiwain siya kagad, nakawin ng pitik bago siya makabalik sa'yo. Then there's kalis, which directly means sword. And among these styles, kalis, the arts that use the term kalis in their terminology, are more explicit about the sword origin of the art. So for them, like one of the styles I'm familiar with, the movement of the stick and the movement of the sword should be the same. There. So if in the stick you can do this loose wrist movement, okay? With the sword, you keep your wrist straight. Why? You do cutting movement. That's a big difference already visually between the two. So in a nutshell, this is some of the differences between arnis, eskrima, kalis. In reality, however, many of these share similar movements. Many of them have similar training methods. But there are details and nuances between the people who claim one or more of the names that make them distinct from one another. In reality, many of these share more in common than there have differences actually.
While Hokano is careful to state that the forms are hybrid variations that borrow freely from each other, there is one form that is unique to the Islamic people of Mindanao.
The Kuntao and Silat, these are what we call the MFA, Moro Fighting Arts. These are mostly coming from many parts in Mindanao, closer to the southern portions. You have Kuntao, well, as some of my friends have told me, Kuntao. Okay, so it's mostly fist. Silat has a more subtle flavor. Silat has more open hand techniques. So if you look at this is very much reminiscent of a dance movement called the Pangalay. But it is not. It is simply silat. However, I've encountered people who have sometimes watched what I did with my silat, and they said, oh, kuntao. For many of these, kuntao is a generic term. But there are those who will disagree and say, no, this is silat. In this case, we refer to Moro more now as a cultural identity in view of the fact that we now have Bangsamoro. And this refers to the group of peoples that have also, for whom Islam has become integrated into their cultural setting. We are who we are. And so, we now use the term Bangsamoro, and we refer to their fighting arts as the Moro fighting arts. Now you have here on this end some examples of the weapons of the Moro fighting arts. These four actually are barong. So the barong is a leaf-shaped sword. This is what we call a yakan barong. The yakan are the people coming from Basilan. This version that I have is unsharpened. Okay, here. And this one fits into my hand like this. So this is the made of steel. Okay, so you have movements like this and so on. And the barong is kind of a very fearsome weapon, mainly because of its weight and the fact that when you get to use it, it will really follow what you're trying to do. It will follow your commands.
In demonstrating various fighting techniques, Hokano minces no words about the deadliness of the skill.
Most people forget that you have what we call espada idaga. So actually, or baston idaga. So that's your stick, and this is the knife. See? Parry, thrust, counter, finish. Now you're back in the same position. Okay? Now, what does it mean? The first one, you stop his attack. The second one, you cut his ankles. Why? You don't want to kill him right away. What do? You stop him from doing his assault on you by cutting his Achilles tendon so he can't walk. Always, always, always give the other fellow a chance to think his way through things. Isa mo dito sa lagi. That's one of the key differences too in the Kuntao and Silat. In Kuntao and Silat, there's a greater emphasis on the empty hand. The same posture I used for the sword. This is also what we use for empty hand. The same movement I used to avoid, to cut. This is to parry his punch, and this is to stop him at his face from below. Parry this. Check him. Martial arts is not about fighting, killing. Although at its heart, these are really fighting arts. Of course, at its most primal level, this is about combat. But the important question is, combat for what purpose? And in this case, martial arts exist because violence exists. And martial arts is the way to stop, control that violence. That's why law enforcement officers are interested in this, because you have to stop criminals from committing their crimes any further. And you have to do it in a way that is also humane, but also direct and to the point, because they learn the lesson that way.
For Hokano, the practice of Filipino martial arts has led him to reflect on the nation's history and the growth of the art. From a means of aggression towards fellow Filipinos to a source of a unifying national identity.
Martial arts, fighting systems, developed partly out of that rivalry for resources, rivalry for space. They needed the territory, they needed the resources, and somebody wanted to compete with you to get them. you begin to fight and develop organized fighting methods to protect what you had. So that's two contexts. First, it was about fighting for resources. Second, defending community. The third context happens here when you see this, the creation of a national identity that started with the revolution. People want to fight here. There's an ideal, a nation that's separate, independent, different. So now you have the use of martial arts specifically as resistance against, this time, another foreign aggressor. Now you're fighting for your existence as a nation. Now you're fighting to break free of a colonial oppressor.
Karamihan sa amin ay nag-asawa na lang, walang pinag-aralan, hindi po kami educated. Bakit ipinanganak ako na IP ako na parang walang mga opportunity na para sa amin?
Nagbabaon kami, kanin lang, ang ulam, bagong, gano'n. Talagang wala nang kaya ang magulang ko.
Hango sa kwento ng mga totoong tao. Tahanan ng mga award-winning documentaries. Public Eye sa PTV. Alam niyo ba kung bakit espesyal tayo mga Pilipino? Dahil may mga katangian tayong kakaiba at tunay na kahanga-hanga. Gaya na lang ni Miguel, na likas na matulungin.
Guys, help natin si Manong oh.
O kaya ni Adrian, na may respeto at paggalang.
Lola, paano po?
Nariyan din si Aya, na malalim ang pananampalataya.
Panginoon, salamat po sa mga biyaya.
Si Aling Sita, na kahit walang-wala, magiliw pa ring tumatanggap ng bisita.
Come in! Tuloy po kayo!
At kapag sinusubok kagaya ni Paulo, nananatiling matatag, masiyahin, at positibo.
Wag ka lang, Pilipino ako.
Yan tayong Pilipino, likas ang kabutihan, katatagan, at pusong makatao. Tutukan ang mga solusyon at aksyon sa mga isyu ng bayan at programa ng pamahalaan para sa bagong Pilipinas. Kasama ang ating Presidential Advisor for Poverty Alleviation, Lani Gadon, live dito lang sa PTV.
Perhaps because his father was the late great anthropologist and national scientist F. Landa Hocano, Felipe Jr. cannot help but seek deeper connections and meanings in the skill he loves so much. For him, there is more than just the coordination of the body that is developed in his practice. Equally valuable are deep emotional and social values developed by the practice of Filipino martial arts.
Pakikisama. When you train with a partner. So to develop skill, these two partners have to agree, whether explicitly or implicitly, to what's going on. Then there's a progression to follow. So as the skill develops, then you add on and add on and add on. But you have pakikisama. Here's another one, pakikitungo. Not everyone is at the same skill level. So at that point then, this is where the respect for each other on a vertical level comes in. The guy who knows more is the teacher. the guy who has got the nerve to start his own group. He's the head teacher. Then there's pakikiramay. Why? Well, accidents will happen. So everybody comes together to help people, to help each other. Sometimes accident in training. Sometimes though the members need help, in which case other people come in and they begin to help out each other. So if you want to see how that embodies culture, I'd look at these three first. Here's another word from Tagalog, hiya. We tend to think hiya is embarrassment, shame. Yeah, but that's only part of the whole picture. Hiya is also a term that goes your emotions, especially when you put in the wrong place, you get wrong-footed. Then there is also another term, utang na loob. That's a mutual reciprocity relationship. A student who is accepted by a teacher feels some utang na loob to the teacher because the teacher is giving knowledge.
With martial skill comes a deeper awareness of our own singularity as human beings, of our need for connectedness to others, most especially in Filipino culture, where relationships are of primal significance. We have so many young Filipinos showing an interest in Filipino martial arts. How then can this skill become more accessible? Now we meet the most active practitioners, masters of an ancient art, now made modern through their dedication and efforts. Samuel Bambit Dulay. Arnold Narazo. Carlito Lanyada Jr. Richardson Dialogo. In the next episode of Dayaw, we hear their voices and watch them bring ancient Filipino martial arts into the present. Their strength, their calm, their focus, and dedication, all vital elements of Dayaw, our knowledge, our pride.